Jackson Bailey here. Come talk about a very interesting topic on the internet today. Topic is why men seem colder, or rather, why we don't seem to process our emotions in the same way that women do. And honestly, there are sociological implications on why this is a factor, but there are neurological ones as well that are not necessarily mistakes, but just different. And I want to talk about both, right? So, have you ever been talking to a guy and you see suddenly his soul just like leaves the chat, like he's just not present anymore? Maybe he's there, but he's just like in some sort of emotional tomb. He's just not very present with you anymore. And you're like, what happened to the person I was just with? They were bubbly, they were this, they were that, and now he sort of collapsed. And that's a normal thing. Actually, it's called recursive buffering. I'm gonna explain what that is. It's a term I've coined. You see, most men are not per se emotionally unavailable, even though there are emotionally unavailable people out there. They're more like emotionally delayed, right? Like an iCloud backup. Like the emotions are coming in, and instead of things being output right away, they're sort of stored until later. And that's not really a flaw. It's not a design flaw as much as it is a difference, right? You see, women process emotions in real time, which is why some men are maybe who don't understand are confused by like, well, she was here, now she's here, and now she's here, and all in the span of a few minutes or an hour or something like that. And obviously, there's a different hormonal process because of the cycle, right? The 28-day cycle, whether she's in her follicular period or in her menstrual period, where there can be a completely different person depending on what sort of emotional feedback is being experienced based on other things too, like your health and whatnot, and maybe just her personalized experiences and who she is as a person. We're all very complex creatures, and so it's not so cut and dry. And emotions are all over the place, and that's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is different is that while these emotions are coming in, they're being sort of cycled out at the same time. It comes in, it comes out. So she'll be here and she'll be there, and that's perfectly fine. For men's emotion, he may be getting hit with an onslaught of things, but then it'll sort of go in the fridge for a bit. It goes dormant until a certain time. You see, what hasn't been really talked about enough is that even though men are on sort of like that 28-day cycle that she's on is in a 24-hour period, there's still an overarching cycle that lasts between 90 and 120 days. And this is men's sort of cycle, whereas every 90 days he's going to have, you could say, he's cleaning out the fridge, so to speak. Have you know this phenomenon in relationships where there is the woman maybe breaks up with him, or it doesn't matter really who, but she's able to sort of get out her emotions quicker. She right away she's letting out the tears and the sad emotions and whatever it may be. She's trying to figure out constructive and helpful ways to help her sort of deal with it, hopefully if they're healthy. And over the course of a few weeks, maybe longer, depending on the duration of the relationship, she's able to get over that. Whereas for men, he's right away, I'm fine, it's cool, I don't really feel overloaded yet, this and that. And maybe, like I said, it's not monolithic, it's case by case, but oftentimes his emotions are going to be delayed. And then later you see him, he's reflecting, he's able to sort of process it, it starts to come back to him, and sometimes he's like, he thinks that it's him missing the person, he's like, I gotta get back, I gotta do this, and you kind of end up being in the same cycle, and whether those feelings are valid or not, that's usually what happens, that he's later able to process through them. And this is a thing called recursive emotional buffering or recursive buffering, where men, in fact, loop internalized feelings. Instead of them coming in, being processed, and then out, sort of like digestion, they loop. They come in, they process, they go back in. The same thing, same cycle over and over again. Sometimes, if their person is not healthy, if they don't have a way to constructively, or rather just not destructively express these emotions, or they have like those sociological implications I was talking about before, where they're thinking about, but how am I going to be perceived? Or if I let these out, it's going to leave me exposed and vulnerability. If I put down the armor, people will be able to hurt me further, this and that. And so much of it, believe it or not, comes from, as antithetical or counterproductive as it is, maybe his partner is saying, hey, I want you to be more emotionally expressive with me, especially with your negative emotions. And he's reading that as, well, if I give away too much vulnerability, I could potentially lose her respect or her adulation or her this or her that. And my frame is now broken. And so he thinks I have to just internalize it or pretend it doesn't exist. But as we all know, emotions don't go away that way. If anything, they just fester. Like putting something in the fridge doesn't get rid of it. It just begins to rot, until other things are affected by it. And now the whole refrigerator smells like that rotten food. And so your emotions are going to do that for you until you could live decades storing negative emotion until one day you either self-destruct or you just sort of never get to live a fulfilled life where your emotions are free and you're able to express and have happy emotions, because you can't just stifle one emotion, you end up stifling all of them. If you try to bury sadness or negative emotions, you end up just blunting the whole spectrum of it, okay? For those of you who work out, you know that you can't burn fat in one area. Like maybe you want abs, but you can't just do ab workouts and think that it's going to make them appear, or you can't just try to lose fat in the one area. You have to lose fat throughout the whole body. And your emotions are really similar. You can't just stifle one and think that's going to be... It's controlling one versus burying it are so different. And if you try to bury one, you end up burying the other ones too, because it's sort of like a cauldron effect. It's not like a department in that way. It's fluid. So you have to work through it. You can't just ignore it. And so if you try to ignore it, you shut yourself down even further and make it harder, because it'll come back eventually. And it doesn't always come out in healthy ways. So we're all for positive, healthy, emotional expressing here. Anyway, so the man's emotions are delayed, and that gets in the way of processing because of him choosing not to, because of how they affected the person, because of him maybe being afraid of how to do it, especially if he hasn't put much practice into it. And so even though you have this normal aspect where the emotions are meant to sort of be processed in a different way, then you have the negative one that gets in the way of that. So when you ask a guy, hey, are you okay? After something he should not be okay after, and he's like, I'm fine, with zero serotonin behind his eyes, that's not maybe dishonesty initially. It could be, but not always. Sometimes that's just his limbic system like buffering. It's like an Internet Explorer. Like it's just not quite caught up yet, And so it stores itself until a time where it's able to process these emotions, because they're usually falling themselves into like a bucket. Like if you have this one emotion is being piled into this bucket until he's able to process all of them together, right? And he's just catching up to himself. And while women process in real time, live updates, full transparency. Men are kind of like, like a cell phone bill. Like at the end of the month, then you get your charge, your billing cycle is over, that sort of thing. So if you want to help him snap out of this, if you want to help, and there's more that goes into this, and I can make more videos about it as well. But if you want to help him to process this, just in a comfortable shared space, you can't force the feelings out. You can't just be like, give me the feelings or you don't love me. That's not gonna fly. It's not, if anything, that'll make him close up further, right? You want to give him the space to not just feel, but to know that he's not going to be judged, so that when this sort of recursive process begins to get to express itself, it's not interrupted, because there's safety, it's not pressure, and he can start to process and practice that more on cue instead of just waiting for it to catch up to him. And that's the goal. We want to sync your emotional aspects together so that you guys are speaking on the same page and that we're not kind of getting lost in translation, you understand? That's the most I'm going to talk about today. And if you have more questions or are interested in other topics, please leave a like, leave a comment, tell me what you think, tell me what you're curious about, and share this video with those you think could benefit from this information. A lot of this information is coming from hot off the press. There's new information every day. I'm trying to be the pioneer of a lot of information based on a mixture of the science of it neurologically, on how it affects our bodies chemically and physiologically, and even how understanding consciousness through a mathematical perspective gives us a better understanding of how we are, like a manual sort of way. But anyway, I'm Jackson Beta. This is Jack's Labs. You can find me on YouTube. I'll be talking a lot more, making a lot more videos. This is the start of something new. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.